Welcome back to the Property Playbook. We're your hosts, Elena Sarditas
and Erica Reddy-Shaquette.
And today we're going to talk all things multiple offers. What do you do and how do you present your offer in the best way to ensure that you get a favorable transaction?
So multiples are back.
I know.
So let's dive in. I've got a couple things I love to do when competing. Let's dive into how to react, how to best structure a bid. Do you preempt? Do you not? I think we should just unpack everything to do with multiple offers.
Okay. Are we going to talk about both the list side and the buy side? Like what happens when you list for multiples and what happens when you're buying?
Sure. Let's set the stage, I think, from a listing standpoint. So you're putting your property on the market. You're trying to get as many eyeballs on your home as humanly possible. You're listing low to entice multiple bids. And what does that look like?
So most sellers need to remember this is a marketing number. This is not a number that you're expecting. Most agents are educated. They're going to do their research ahead of time. They're going to know that this is not what it's actually going to sell for. So I know it sounds super, super scary. Like you're going to list my home for this. Like how am I going to get that higher number if you list this low? The property is only worth what a buyer is willing to pay. That's the number one rule. The next thing that your agent will look at is what is the spread? What does that area usually sell for if they list for an offer night? So is there a $200,000 difference? Is there a $300,000? Is there a $100,000 difference? And that's going to be the determining factor. Now, you need to list low enough that you actually get enough eyeballs in there and enough offers for this actually to work. Sometimes
100%. I think that's the biggest piece that people miss is if you don't list low enough, you completely mess up the entire process. And you said it so well. Every area is different. Every area transacts at a different range and a different price point. So I've just listed one, for example, at 1.5. We're hoping 1.7, 1.75 plus. That's roughly the spread.
And you heard it here first.
There we go. Cat's out of the bag. But the spread in that neighborhood is about 200,000 to 250,000. So the buyers in that pocket are groomed to know that if they're competing, that's roughly the spread. But to your point, if we were to list with only a $50,000 spread, the buyer would look at that property and think 200 to 250,000 is the spread, and they would look at the price and be like, that's crazy. This house is not for me. So pricing as the listing agent wanting to have multiples, work is critical.
And believe it or not, there is a huge difference without one, like for example, we just did this, you know this, I had a listing up recently. 1,899 was the debate or 1,999. We know that this house is going to sell over 2. That's a given. It's detached in the location that it was in. Now, the difference is if I list at 1,899, I get all the 1.9 buyers too. If you list at 1,999, you alienate all the 1.9 buyers, the people that are tapped out before 2. And then you have less people. If you have less people competing, will you get to the number that you need to get to?
I'd say no.
So that's the strategy. Do not look at list price. Look at the comps, and the comps will tell you where you need to go.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the most important thing too, because listen, we've sat with sellers that go, oh my gosh, this is uncomfortable. Erica, I don't really know how I feel about that. I want to be closer. I want to sell here. And you're suggesting $200,000 or $300,000 less. That makes me uncomfortable. What I think you have to remember as a seller is you are trying to get as many people to come forward on the offer night as possible. Because if you're a buyer up against 5 other buyers that want the house, you're probably going to react differently than if there's only one. If there's only one person that wants the house alongside you, you're like, what's wrong with the house?
And why would
what
I pay
am I
more
missing?
money?
Exactly. So list price, if you're a seller, is everything for multiples succeeding.
And then the other thing that you have to remember is when you get your offers, you're gonna get the offers that are not good. Like this is part of the game. You're gonna have a cluster of offers that are below the number that's reasonable for this property. Sometimes agents do their homework and they know the client needs to get burned. And we thank those agents because we need them to make sure that we get our price. And other times they just didn't know and they went in too low and there was no chance they were going to get the property. Those lower offers help us get a higher number. So for example, again, hypothetical, if I listed at 1,899, there is going to be a cluster at that 1.9 mark. That's a given.
Absolutely. Yep.
People that maybe think they're going to get a deal, we don't know where it's going to land. And then there's going to be a cluster higher up around the 2.1s, 2.2 mark. That's how it usually goes. There's going to be a cluster low, there's going to be a cluster high, and then there's going to be a couple people in the middle. The higher people now sense the competition. And now they're going to work a little bit harder to get the property. That's the goal of an offer night, is how quickly can you sell the property for hopefully the most amount of money possible, keyword always possible, in the least amount of time with the least amount of conditions.
Absolutely.
That's the offer night strategy.
Yep.
It's we want it done quickly, we want it done fast, we want it done firm.
Yeah.
How
And
do
we're
we get
giving,
there?
and listen, as a listing agent, you're giving those buyers roughly a week to get their ducks in a row. You're giving them, you know, in an ideal situation, if you're listing strategically as a listing agent, you're going out with your pre-list inspection, you're going out with your garden suite or laneway report, you're going out with all the information humanly possible about the home that a buyer can make a really educated and relatively quick decision on if the property's right for them. They also then have the time to do an additional inspection if they want or do any further diligence so that they're ready to be firm, check on hand, and really play ball on the actual offer night. And I think the really important piece, I always say this with my clients when they're on the listing side, is I'm not going to come forward with, you know, every offer that registers as I know what it is. I never come forward with it till I've got them all grouped together, because to your point, you're always going to have a couple that are going to scare anybody off from the process working. You're going to have a couple of those offers where you go, this is not, no, this doesn't make sense. We don't need this, but thanks so much for submitting your offer, because people want to try things on for size. But if you're a seller and you're trusting the process and you get the very first offer that we see that maybe isn't that great, you might think this is the worst thing we've ever done.
So I do the same thing. I present them all at the same time.
Yes.
So first I call them and I tell them we have X amount of offers. We're reviewing them right now. I'm going to call you back in 30 minutes and I'm going to give you the rundown and give you access to our spreadsheet.
Yes.
Then we spreadsheet it.
Yes, same.
So we write, this is how much they're offering. This is the listing agent, the co-op agent's name. This is the deposit. This
Conditions,
is herewith,
etc.
not. This is all the information that you need. Then I call them and I go, I just gave you access to the Google spreadsheet. No freaking out yet. We're going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, this is, you know, I have to legally present all these offers to you. These are the top 3 offers. These are the conditions. At this stage, I'm going to invite the top 3 to come back. And then that's what I do.
Yep.
Typically.
Yeah.
Don't quote me. Don't be like, Elena, you didn't let me come back. Because if we have one that's, you know, my client wants to take it, they want to take it.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the thing. Every strategy is going to be different. And so this is actually probably a perfect segue into being a buyer in this process, because, you know, every listing agent is going to send out their terms and their instructions prior to the offer date, hopefully. And they're going to outline exactly how the offer process is going to work. So a buyer's agent and a buyer are able to come in, I would say, relatively prepared and ready. They're going to know that the listing agent wants all offers by X time. They need to submit their best and final, or they need to submit their first offer, knowing that they're going to have the opportunity to improve, whatever that looks like, the optimal closing date. You know, a lot of things are stipulated in that kind of pre-offer email, if you will. And then that gives the buyer's agent and the buyer time to think, strategize, run numbers, run comps, and get ready.
So usually in that pre-offer email, we should probably list out exactly what's in it.
Yep.
So it's usually like, thank you so much for showing this property. This is the rundown for what's going to happen tomorrow night.
Yep.
Usually.
Yep.
And it will say, number 1, the highest price, like that's what we're looking for. Number 2, we prefer this closing date. If you can do it, great. Number 3, deposit herewith, key factor. If you have the deposit herewith, it shows that you are ready to close now.
Absolutely. Because if you don't submit a deposit with your offer, people always go, well, what's the big deal? I can get the deposit tomorrow. I've said I'm getting it. It's a huge sum of money. But if you submit your offer and you don't submit the deposit, there's no collateral. So the deposit is effectively you saying, yes, I'm standing behind this piece of paper, and the deposit is technically due within 24 hours of acceptance. But if you don't bring that deposit, there's no collateral. There's frankly no deal.
So that is a huge factor, bringing the deposit here with the offer. I would say be prepared to drive it that night.
Absolutely.
And if you can fully tell the agent that's on the listing side, listen, we have the deposit. We will bring it to you right now. Like, we're coming.
Yep.
Take our offer and we're coming. That's how you make it as clean as possible. Because if someone has the deposit and someone doesn't have the deposit, which deal are you more likely going to take?
100%, I would say to a seller, take the one with the deposit, because you've got certainty. You can go to bed and you know this deal is done. Without that deposit, there's a looming kind of cloud of, we still need that deposit to come in for this deal to be firm.
Then they'll write down inclusions or exclusions. If there's something that they want to include or not include in the transaction, they'll put that on paper. The next thing that they'll most likely talk about is if there's any rentals. So if the hot water tank is a rental, they'll outline it. So you really know exactly what you're getting into before offer night. If there is a home inspection, they'll probably allure to it again and say, listen, if you want access to it, we have it, email us, we'll send it over to you.
Exactly.
So everything is outlined. They'll usually even say, like, offers are registered by, let's say, 6 o'clock. We're going to start presenting them at 7, and we want a 5-hour irrevocable. So, like, we're going to wrap this up as quickly as possible, but give us the time.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they will say, look, there's no guarantee for a second round. So come in with your best. And if the numbers are close, then we'll ask them to come back. And when they say close, it needs to be close enough that the other person will wake up tomorrow and be like, oh my God, I lost on this.
But I think what's really important too is, so these instructions get sent out, and then this is where the buyer's agent really has to start asking the questions, because to your point on close seems to mean something different to everybody in this lovely world of real estate. My version of close is actually close. Like we're talking $5,000, $10,000.
I agree.
We're not talking 50 to 100, but I've been in situations where I call an agent and say, give me your definition of close. And they're like, 25, 50, 100. I'm like, what? Okay, so everybody's getting sent back. So I think it's really, really important that you start thinking through as a buyer and with your buyer's agent, really then honing in on, okay, what do the offer instructions mean? What does this mean for me as I prepare my offer? And what does close mean? And what does the closing mean? And what do all these things mean to the seller so that you can best prepare how you put your best foot forward, or how you put your best foot forward, but then still have some fuel left in the tank because you're arguably probably going to be moving or having to come up.
So that's a good question, the fuel left in the tank if you're moving up, but you also have to remember that you need to be invited to come back.
Absolutely.
And if you're too low, like, oh my God, like we'll give them this because we can go to max. If they don't invite you back, you never had the opportunity to go to max. And if tomorrow it sells for that, are you gonna be upset? So it's almost better in some circumstances to just go in at the number you're okay to lose it at, and then you at least get invited back. And at that point, it's your choice. Do you want to move up? Do you want to stay as is? And sometimes staying as is, you could end up getting the property regardless. You just need to know what your numbers are and be really, really aware of, if you're not going to cut into the next round, go to that number.
Yep.
Because you want to get invited back. You don't want to say you lost based on a number that you would have paid.
Well, I think
the
that's
worst thing in the world.
That's the key thing. And I mean, I always say to my buyers, at the end of the day, you want to put a number on paper that if you get the house at that number, you're ecstatic. If you lose the house at that number, you haven't lost any sleep, because then you've done the right thing. Then you can sleep at night and move on to the next house, or own it and be thrilled that you got it.
It's the saying, if it sold tomorrow for even $1 more, would you have paid it? And if the answer is no, then like, go to sleep, be happy. It wasn't your house. It was someone else's house. But if you tell me tomorrow I would have paid that, that's the worst feeling in the world.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, listen, I think I say this to clients all the time. It's a really tough market. It's competitive and it's hard. And multiples as a buyer aren't fun, no matter how you slice it. They're just nerve-wracking. They're emotional. They are what they are. But I think what's really important is, I say to people all the time, everything in this market happens for a reason. And you might have a really tough night where you lose one that you thought was going to be your home, and you'd pretty much plan the entire, property out. You had right down to like the last area rug. But it honestly, when you do land your house, it all makes sense. And I do believe that in my heart of hearts.
And then the other thing that I would say is, this is a relationship-based business. Likability plays a huge role. If your agent becomes friends with the listing agent, and vice versa, if the listing agent becomes friends with your buying agent, then there is a higher likelihood you will get the house.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're all in this to work together. Yeah. We all want to put a deal together where everybody on every side is happy. Now, at the end of the day, we are representing, be it the buyer or the sellers, those clients' best interest first and foremost. But absolutely, if you're coming forward and you've got your ducks in a row and you've got, all the pieces and parts and everything in place, and you're there to compete, and that is probably going to be looked at in a more favorable light than somebody that doesn't have all of that organized and in place coming forward.
Yeah, and communication plays a huge role. Like, your buyer agent should be making friends with the listing agent the moment you realize you want to put in an offer. Like, this shouldn't be a let's call each other on offer night. It should be I'm going to call them. Not every day. Don't be that annoying.
I was going to say, slow down. Yeah.
No, but I am going to develop a relationship with them. So on offer night, if I wouldn't have gotten called back, they at least call me.
Yeah.
And I've had a conversation. So like, I had, once upon a time, this is actually recent, I sat with the mortgage broker today, actually. We did a deal, and we were not in the top group.
Yeah.
They did invite us back though, and we got the house. So I remember when we submitted, my clients wanted to submit at a certain number. I did tell them, like, look, the comps are saying this. We can go in a little bit higher. They were very, very comfortable going in, starting at that number. I called the agent and I developed a pre-existing relationship with them. And I fully said, this is a starting number. Make sure to call me. Mm-hmm. And I think there were 12 offers. And he goes, "You're ninth."
Yeah.
And I said, "No worries. Thank you for calling me. I am improving. I'll be back." And I called my clients and we worked out a deal and they got the house.
Yeah.
And I remember the listing agent calling me back being like, "I'm shocked it went to your client." And it wasn't that big of a difference, like you guys getting it versus the person right behind you. But I'm surprised that they upped themselves this much. And I'm like, they really just wanted to know what was happening before they came up with their last number.
Oh, for sure. And that's where the relationship matters.
If you didn't develop that relationship previously, though, that they would have called you in ninth, they wouldn't have called me.
No, of course
They would
not.
have called the top 5, the top 4, and said, "You guys come forward," and my clients would have lost the house.
Absolutely.
But we had a pre-existing relationship. I fully talked to them a little bit too much, I would say, but they're my new best friends.
But I think at the end of the day, this is what's critical, is because sometimes you're going to look at a situation and listen, buyers drive the bus in what makes sense for them and where their moral compass lies on how they start and where they go. And to your point on that example, there are some situations where a client literally goes, "I really want to see how the cards fall before I make my decision. I think it might go there, but I don't want to go there until I see that everybody else wants to take it there." And so in the case that you were borderline dead last and then you came first, I've had that happen too. But I think to your point on the relationship, if the communication and the relationship isn't established from day one, when you're dealing with 12 offers as a listing agent and you have a million inbound phone calls and all these things happening, I mean, you are juggling a lot. And so it's important to be able to look and be like, "Yep, okay, there's Elena. She's got it. She's told me she's coming. Okay, I don't know where she's coming from based on what she initially submitted, but here we go."
So that
let's
deal
give her
happened.
let's give her another round.
While we were in New York. Do you remember that?
Yes.
How I literally walked out and I'm like, my client's house popped up on the market and one of my team members had to show it.
Yes.
I called them and was like, "Do not take the preemptive offer.
I remember.
This is my client's house."
There you go.
And guess
See?
what? It was my client's house.
I remember literally she was on the call and she was like, no, you can't sell. I cannot describe to you how they have to buy I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, they better buy this house.
No, they're buying this house.
Talk this agent out of letting the client
Take a preemptive offer. But
yeah.
I've built up this reputation in the industry that if I'm coming, I'm coming.
Listen to you.
I know, but it's a thing. Like, if my clients are interested, we've done the homework. We've done the back end. They've been fully approved. We're not just coming in to come in. Like, and if it is that type of situation where they need to get burned, the agent on the other side already knows that.
Yeah.
Like, I've had a conversation with them and I've said, "Listen, I get it.
Yeah.
I know where you're trying to go. They want to Hail Mary it and put in the offer and see what happens, but they get it."
Yeah. I also think what's really important, and this is something that I live and breathe by when working for buyers. So here's my big tip. So anybody that wants to take it away when you win the house against me, I'll know that you took it from here, is you need to get weird with your numbers. I think too often people land on the 5, the 10, the 15, the 20. So when you're in that final round, if you've made it to the top 2 or the top 3, get creative with your numbers. And when I say creative, throw in whatever it is, a birthday, an anniversary, the kid's favorite
Oh my God,
numbers.
stop. Someone did that to me the other day. They put their anniversary number as the last 3 digits of their offer.
But sometimes it's come down to we're at something where we're getting to the end of the number and we're going, is it 28,322 or 28,000? Listen, it's worked.
I know, I agree with you, but I always tell people, my agents all know this too, do not end on a whole number. So people like to go up in intervals of 5.
100%.
So if, for example, you're at 1.5, odds are the next person's at 1.55.
Of course.
1.5, like they're going up in intervals. Words are hard. Intervals of 5. So people go up 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Like, that's the usual number. And you'll see it on offer night. All the numbers look relatively the same. And then you'll see the 1 or 2 people that are a little creative that they're like, and 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000. Just don't land on the 5. So if you're debating to go a little higher or go a little lower, I always tell people the extra 1,000 or the extra 2,000 is not going to make or break you.
No.
But it could be the difference.
Yeah.
Because if you're competing with someone else and they're deadlocked the exact same number and you're $1,000 more, $2,000 more, aren't you going to be glad that you got it over someone else?
Yeah. And that's where I always say, like, if you're landing at 25,000, get to 28,000 or get to 32,000. I recognize I'm pushing you 3 or 4 or 8 or whatever $1,000, but those numbers make such a difference because that final round, provided the listing agent stands by their words, which they should when they say last round, best offer, that best offer is typically taken by the tiniest spread. So that, for me, is where it's at when you're a buyer.
Well, now you know if me and Erica ever compete against each other, we're going to have the exact same number. We'll be
For a whole-
rotational.
yeah. I'll be like, okay, come on, make the anniversary a slightly better, whatever it is.
She'll be going on anniversary date, and I'll just be like, look, $1,000, $2,000 won't make or break you.
I'm not going to share my lucky numbers here because I don't want to lose over. What? I'm not disclosing.
What are your lucky numbers?
No,
Is
they're
it
not
eights?
coming
Is it
out.
sevens?
I love 8s and 9s.
Okay, 8s and 9s. Mine are 7 and 8s.
Okay, so then see, I'd be having the upper hand ever so slightly.
No, not if I flip my numbers.
Okay, fine.
We don't know where you'll place them. And now I know. 8s and 9s, I'll be like, who's the other agent? They'll be like, Erica. And I'll be like, is there an 8 and a 9 in that agreement?
Time to flip it.
Time to flip it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, where are we off to?
I think we are. I mean, to me, that's like the gold. That's the money right there in that conversation as far as tips and tricks. I think that probably brings us to the end of our multiple segment.
And just a reminder for everyone, rate announcements is happening April 10th. Do you have a prediction?
I think they're going to hold.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
What about you? Why do I get to get the prediction and you don't?
In all honesty, I do think they're going to hold too. I think we have another hold or so before they start lowering.
Okay.
But we're going to know April 10th, and then we'll figure out if we're completely off.
Yeah.
Or
if we're
if,
wrong, or if we're right, or if we need to cover a whole entire segment on why we said hold and
Exactly.
it wasn't the right prediction.
But once again, thank you so much for listening to Property Playbook. We're your hosts, Elena Sarditas.
And Erica Reddy-Shakat.
And if you like content like this, make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.